man. Be in the moment. Play after play after play. We some dogs. Let's go.
The Minnesota Vikings arrive in Dublin with something that goes far beyond hype. And here's the spoiler right from the start. Their absolute advantage over the Pittsburgh Steelers is rooted in two undeniable realities: defense and international dominance. The numbers don't lie. Minnesota has never lost a regular season game outside the US, sitting at 4-0 abroad. And when you line that up with a defense ranked top 6 overall, compared to Pittsburgh's unit hovering near the bottom of the league, the contrast is staggering. Add the fact that the Steelers' offense has been outgained in every game this season, and suddenly the matchup tilts heavily purple. Coming up, I'll show you why Isaiah Rodgers' performance last week wasn't just a highlight, it's the template for how Minnesota will suffocate Aaron Rodgers in Dublin. The Vikings aren't just coming off a win, they're coming off a demolition. A 48-10 thrashing of Cincinnati wasn't a one-off explosion, it was a blueprint. Isaiah Rodgers didn't just take over the game, he completely reset expectations. An 87-yard pick six, a 66-yard fumble return, and multiple forced turnovers in one half sent a clear message. This secondary is opportunistic and relentless. Film shows Rodgers baiting throws with shallow coverage looks before exploding downhill. Against Aaron Rodgers, who has already thrown interceptions in consecutive games, this becomes a nightmare scenario. What Pittsburgh faces is a defense that ranks third against the pass while allowing just over 180 yards through the air per game. The Steelers, meanwhile, haven't produced a single 100-yard receiving game from any pass catcher. Running back Jaylen Warren leads them in receiving yards, a glaring weakness when you're about to face corners and safeties thriving on limiting explosive plays. In just a moment, we'll break down why Jordan Mason's rise in the backfield is the missing piece that turns Minnesota's balanced attack into a clear-cut advantage. When you review Minnesota's offensive film against Cincinnati, one thing jumps out: balance. Jordan Mason punished a Bengals defense for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 16 carries. It wasn't just volume, it was efficiency, averaging over 7 yards per attempt. The Steelers, by contrast, sit at 31st in rushing offense and haven't cracked 65 rushing yards in a game. This disparity is massive. Minnesota has a run game that can control tempo, while Pittsburgh is forced into predictable passing downs. The Vikings' ability to establish Mason also feeds into Carson Wentz's comfort level. Wentz doesn't have to be a gunslinger, he needs to be efficient. In his first start, he completed 70% of passes, tossed 2 touchdowns, and crucially, had no turnovers. With Mason drawing defenders into the box, Wentz benefits from cleaner windows and a chance to work rhythm throws to Justin Jefferson and tight end TJ Hawkinson. Stick around, because up next, I'll reveal how Jordan Addison's return from suspension alters the Steelers' entire defensive approach and why this creates matchup nightmares. Addison's reinstatement comes at the perfect time. While Justin Jefferson has faced constant double teams, Addison's elite separation skills force defenses to respect a second vertical threat. Coaches rave about his ability to win at all levels of the route tree. This isn't just theory film from his previous seasons, shows consistent leverage wins on both intermediate crossers and sideline fades. Now paired with Jefferson, Addison ensures the Steelers' secondary can't lean its coverage entirely toward one side. And here's where it becomes a problem for Pittsburgh. Their secondary ranks 26th against the pass. Even with Jalen Ramsey matching up on Jefferson, it doesn't erase the impact of Addison drawing single coverage or Hawkinson exploiting soft zones. Remember, this is the same Steelers defense that allowed Hunter Henry to torch them for 90 yards and 2 scores just a week ago. Coming shortly, we'll dive into why Minnesota's track record overseas isn't just trivia, it's psychological warfare, and it matters in Dublin. International play is Minnesota's domain. They've played 4 regular season games abroad and won them all. From London to now Dublin, the Vikings carry a perfect 4-0 record. Compare that with Pittsburgh, who has 0 international wins. These aren't just statistics, they're indicators of preparation, adaptability, and organizational culture. The Vikings have turned overseas travel into routine success, while the Steelers enter unfamiliar territory. Momentum and confidence matter. Players in purple walk into Croke Park believing history is on their side. For Pittsburgh, it's about overcoming ghosts of failed trips abroad, including their 2013 loss to Minnesota in London. Add in the Rooney family's deep ties to Ireland, And suddenly, this isn't just a football game, it's emotional weight piled onto a roster already struggling for rhythm. But wait until you hear what's brewing in the trenches, because Minnesota's defensive front has a very specific way to neutralize Aaron Rodgers' quick-release style. Film from last week tells a clear story. Andrew Van Ginkel has become a disruptive force. 2 sacks, multiple pressures, and relentless pursuit off the edge created chaos for Cincinnati's passing attack. Against the Steelers, this pass rush is crucial. Aaron Rodgers has been getting rid of the ball quickly to mask offensive line weaknesses, but that hasn't prevented turnovers. The Vikings front, ranked top 10 in overall pressure rate, thrives on collapsing passing lanes and forcing rushed decisions. Contrast that with Pittsburgh's offensive line, which allowed 9 sacks through 2 games before finally holding up against New England. That improvement was more about scheme than dominance, with Rodgers leaning heavily on short, quick throws. Minnesota's secondary thrives when quarterbacks are funneled into conservative options, and that's where this defensive line's pressure feeds perfectly into opportunistic coverage. Coming up next, I'll connect how turnovers, not just yards, will define this matchup and why Minnesota holds the decisive edge. Turnovers will be the hidden headline in Dublin. The Vikings defense already has 7 forced fumbles in 3 games and sits at +2 in turnover differential. Pittsburgh, while opportunistic last week with 5 takeaways against New England, has been living on thin margins. Their defense bends constantly, surrendering nearly 390 yards per game, and if takeaways dry up, they collapse. Minnesota, on the other hand, doesn't just take the ball away, they convert those turnovers into points. Isaiah Rodgers proved it with 2 defensive touchdowns in 1 half, something Pittsburgh simply can't match. Stay tuned, because in just a moment, I'll show you how Minnesota's red zone efficiency on both sides of the ball is the X factor that makes this advantage absolute. Inside the 20-yard line, the Vikings separate themselves. Offensively, they rank 6th in scoring, turning drives into touchdowns at a clip that forces opponents to play catch-up. Defensively, they've allowed just 9 touchdowns across 3 games, putting them in the top 10 in scoring defense. Pittsburgh? They've been great at capitalizing in the red zone offensively, 7 touchdowns on 8 trips, but that number is inflated by short fields, gifted by turnovers. Without those breaks, their inability to sustain drives shows up quickly. Film study reveals why. Minnesota uses condensed formations near the goal line to spring open Jefferson on quick outs or fades, while Wentz has leaned heavily on Hockenson in the seam. Meanwhile, the defense rotates safeties late, forcing quarterbacks into ill-timed throws. Against a Steelers offense that struggles with chunk plays, red zone possessions will be limited. That makes every stop more punishing, and it's here where the Vikings' advantage becomes overwhelming. Coming up, let's dig into how Kevin O'Connell's game planning in neutral site games has quietly turned into one of Minnesota's biggest weapons. Kevin O'Connell has mastered international preparation. This is not small talk. It's part of why Minnesota thrives overseas. In both London appearances under his tenure, the Vikings looked fresher, faster, and more disciplined than their opponents. O'Connell emphasizes controlled schedules, walkthroughs that simulate stadium conditions, and travel science to reduce fatigue. The result? Players consistently mention feeling sharper abroad than at home. Contrast that with Pittsburgh, who despite cushy accommodations at Carton House, are on unfamiliar ground. This is their first overseas regular season game in 12 years. Preparation matters, and no amount of 5-star luxury replaces organizational experience. O'Connell has made global games part of the Vikings' identity. The Steelers are dabbling, Minnesota is dominating. But don't go anywhere, because in a few seconds I'll show you how Minnesota's offensive line adjustments, even with injuries, are still tilting the balance against Pittsburgh's pass rush. The trenches always decide games, and Minnesota's line has quietly managed adversity. Losing Donovan Jackson for 2 games after wrist surgery could have been catastrophic. Instead, veterans like Ryan Kelly returning to action stabilized the interior. On film, Christian Darrisaw's return at left tackle is massive. His footwork neutralized Cincinnati's edge rush and gave Wentz clean pockets. Now, look at Pittsburgh's front. Yes, they still have TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, but the production has been inconsistent. Watt broke a sackless streak last week, but Pittsburgh still ranks in the bottom tier defensively overall. They rely too heavily on splash plays. When forced into sustained battles, their pass rush fades. Minnesota's quick passing game, paired with Mason's physical running style, neutralizes the very players Pittsburgh counts on. In just a bit, we'll dive into why Aaron Rodgers' history against Minnesota isn't the advantage people think. It's actually part of the reason the Vikings control this matchup. Aaron Rodgers knows the Vikings well. 17 career wins against them, 59 touchdown passes. But here's the twist. Most of that damage came during his Green Bay tenure, with a supporting cast built around him. This Steelers offense is nothing like that. Through 3 weeks, no wide receiver has topped 100 yards in a game, and DK Metcalf's usage has been erratic. The chemistry simply isn't there yet. On tape, Rodgers has been forced into short area completions, leaning on running back Jaylen Warren. That's a telltale sign of an offense lacking vertical bite. Against a Vikings defense ranked third against the pass, Rodgers faces the very blueprint designed to frustrate him. Minnesota disguises coverage, rotates corners late, and closes windows fast. Old familiarity doesn't help when the personnel matchups are this lopsided. Up next, we'll reveal how Minnesota's dominance on special teams, often overlooked, could swing field position and add to their edge in Dublin. Special teams can't be ignored. Vikings kicker Will Reichard is on a historic streak. 7 straight games with a 50-plus yard field goal. He's 6 for 6 this season, flawless indoors and outdoors. In a stadium like Croke Park, where swirling winds can complicate long kicks, having a reliable leg becomes an underrated weapon. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh hasn't shown the same consistency in special teams production. It's not just Reichard. Minnesota's coverage units have limited return yardage all year, forcing opponents into long fields. Pair that with a defense designed to capitalize on mistakes, and suddenly, every drive for Pittsburgh feels like climbing uphill. These hidden yards stack up quickly, giving Minnesota short fields for Wentz and Mason to exploit. Coming shortly, let's connect all the dots why Minnesota's balance, defense, and overseas pedigree form the absolute advantage promised in the title. When you tally the evidence, the picture is clear. Minnesota boasts a top-6 defense, a balanced offense that just hung 48 points on Cincinnati, and a proven formula abroad. Pittsburgh counters with a bottom-ranked defense, a one-dimensional offense, and a quarterback still adjusting to new surroundings. On paper, on film, and in history, every major factor points to the Vikings. O'Connell's adaptability, Wentz's efficient stewardship, Mason's ground game, Jefferson and Addison stretching defenses, Hawkinson controlling the middle, Reichard nailing long kicks. Each piece reinforces the edge. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh leans on Aaron Rodgers' legacy and the hope of opportunistic turnovers. But that's not sustainable against a team this complete. What truly sets Minnesota apart in this matchup is how their strengths connect seamlessly, defense creating turnovers that fuel a balanced offense, special teams winning hidden yards, and coaching maximizing every detail of preparation. It's not just individual performances, but the cohesion of all 3 phases working in unison that gives the Vikings a decisive upper hand. The absolute advantage isn't hype. It's built on numbers, film, and execution. Defense travels, preparation matters, and history repeats itself. Minnesota has never lost abroad, and there's no sign that changes in Dublin. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.